Hello everyone. The very first thing I'm going to do is change the title. I said building bridges through the arts, so I think that, it seems that the rails are in fact more of a bridge builder than the cultural links here in 2017 is not only a celebration of Canada, but also a celebration of our metropolis here in Montreal, and therefore we hope that we move towards 2017 with great ideas and that we find a way to actually solidify and unite and create the links between the rail and the culture in our country.
Each and every one of us needs to feel that their differences are welcome. A country is a collective work of art. It requires creativity, it requires diversity, and when communities come together, great things do happen. Les arts et la culture définissent sans équivoque.
Art and culture defines who we are as Canadians and defines our diversity.
It will be a year of celebration across this country and in our city. As we take a look at our broad cultural landscape, we have to reflect upon what unites us as Canadians, what truly defines us as a nation. My hope is that instead of building towers, we will learn all together about building bridges or railways and networks between our communities, our cities, and our provinces. One of Canada's leading distinguishing factors is its artistic landscape. I'm, of course, totally biased. As a professional working in the arts for many years, I've had the wonderful experience of seeing firsthand the benefits of arts education, arts creation, in connecting and enriching our communities. I can say with great conviction that what makes us Canadians so special here and abroad, what interconnects us all, are the arts, our artists, our institutions, and our diversity, both cultural and linguistic. Too often, in our interactions with others, we let politics get in the way. Whether it's about language, territory, religion, cultural diversity, the notion of us is still far too prevalent in Canada. I firmly believe that we can use the arts to bridge these differences, all of them. Le Canada est une nation en art.
Canada is an artistic nation and demonstrates all its diversity.
More than twice as much attending performing arts events each year than they spend attending all sports events put together. Or that more Canadians attend live theater than professional hockey. A recent study shows that this represents no less than $1.4 billion on live performing arts in Canada. So yes, cultural economy in Canada is thriving. It is thriving in our cities. It's thriving in our neighborhoods. It's remarkable, it is true, and this is who we are. We're inordinately proud of our artists. We should also take pride in ourselves as a nation that engages so passionately and so fully in supporting the arts. Our artists are the reflection of how a society evolves, our history, our present, our aspirations for the future. These are the individuals who hold a mirror to us, reflecting our experiences and concepts through the creation of stories, movement, music, images. They spark creativity in us by sharing with audiences and those around them. They revisit our very own stories with that unique Canadian flair. They speak about what is often unspoken. They bring us to question who we are, how we view the world, and how we evolve as a society. Is it any wonder then that Toronto's Soul Pepper Theatre Company's greatest success is a multicultural creation about a Korean convenience store set in present-day Toronto? And what about the most successful show in the history of the National Arts Centre's English Theatre, the multicultural production of Oliver, featuring a Black Oliver? Ou le théâtre Yiddish d'Orawa-Sermon du Centre Segal des Arts de la Scène.
Or the Yiddish theater in the Segal Center, where we had Les Belles Sœurs of Michel Tremblay in Yiddish. And perhaps you've seen Macbeth in Creole in Montreal, we did it. So that is the Canada that I aspire to.
Creation is at the heart of what we do best as Canadians. And the works of art that we create do reflect a reality of multiculturalism, a reality of many value systems living together, and a reality of constantly growing and changing cities and neighborhoods. Speaking from personal experience, I can think of two of our most successful plays at the Segal Center. The musical Lies My Father Told Me and the currently running Sherlock Holmes. For both productions, we commissioned Canadian artists to reinterpret the classics, the latter a reimagining of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's iconic British sleuth, and the former a musical adaptation of Ted Allen's seminal Montreal story. Both runs were sold out, bringing the most evenly represented audiences, uniting the young and the old through theater. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have Jay Baruchel playing our Sherlock. If you've had the opportunity to read any of the press these past few days surrounding Jay's participation in Sherlock, the most consistent message that he conveys is his pride in his city and in his country. Here we have an actor who has played roles in big-budget Hollywood productions, telling the media that more than anything in the world, he is happy to be home, doing what he loves on Canadian soil in his very own neighborhood in NDG. This is the pride I'm talking about, and this is the kind of pride it's important to foster and nurture so that Canadians continue to feel supported within their communities, to tell their own stories, our stories, and to practice and share their creative talent. Similarly, the musical Lies My Father Told Me adapted a Canadian classic and brought to the stage a story about a family in Montreal during a great time of change in this city. Our audiences related to this story, and those who didn't live through it were not only entertained, they learned. They learned by catching a glimpse of their Montreal during another time. These are the experiences that help build a strong and healthy pride in Canada. Hearing the stories of others help initiate a dialogue between communities and building bridges in the most unexpected way. If I were to say, okay, so there's a general consensus that arts and culture make communities a better place to live, you might ask me to elaborate. Combien d'entre vous ont assisté?
How many of you have gone to the theater or to a concert or a festival or a dance or a very touching cultural experience over the last year? Culture is part of day-to-day life.
Are all choices we make as an audience to embrace our culture, even when we're exposed to something new, something harsh, something challenging. The very act of allowing those discussions to happen celebrates our freedom of expression as Canadians. Therefore, the place that offers these experiences become in itself a community made up of people from all communities, sharing a common experience of creativity and of expression. If we are to truly become an arts nation, we need to value the creative process. We need to allow for the sharing of ideas, the sharing of cultural resources. We need to focus on a much more cohesive integration of our cultural policies. We need to focus, importantly, on better supporting the creative process. If we want to talk about building bridges in a concrete manner, we need, as Canadians, to play our part. There's, in Canada, a major lack of support for creation. How can we support our artists so that we can see their successes and our stories play out on our stages? Comment peut-on créer des communautés créatives?
How can we create creative communities and create links between them, whether they're in Vancouver, Ottawa, Montreal, or Quebec, or wherever they may be? Artists are creating everywhere in our communities, and it is imperative that we should bring our artists together, our cultural institutions, and not have competition but cooperation between them.
Canada needs a broad incubator linked coast to coast, not unlike our vast railway system, a network that connects the dots between creative communities, artists, and allow for the free exchange of ideas. Another brief example of an experience. Où peut-on relier les artistes?
How do we link these artists, and how better can we do it? Other than here in Montreal, we can take an Anglophone place like the Segal Center, and we can work with La Compagnie du Cep or Le Rideau Vert and so on. So we can offer the same production in English and in French right here in Montreal with the same actors. Only in Canada can we do that. This is Canada. This is the Canada that represents us.
A country is a collective work of art. We all have a combined responsibility as Canadians to nurture the arts, whether it is through cultural participation, corporate, philanthropic, or public support. As we move towards 2017, how do we collectively promote and inspire a creative Canada? I love this quote. There's two ways of being creative. One can sing and dance, or one can create an environment where artists, singers, and dancers can sing and dance. Thank you. Welcome to Arts Nation.
Merci beaucoup, Manon.
Thank you, Manon. I was reading earlier, and I was thinking as I was listening to you, about 2 weeks ago, I think, in Alberta, they said that in the primary schools, they've had a course for music for 50 years, and they were going to put a stop to it. How do you see our future? If we want good projects to happen, we have to give access to culture to the very young people. Yes, and it's absolutely alarming when we see the very little culture that we have in our schools. And whenever we have cuts in budgets, that's where we cut. In the government, in the schools. And yet, if we look at what's happening in Venezuela, for example, we see that people are, in fact, tied to the school if there's more culture, that there were less dropouts. Yes, it's ironical, because really we should have art for all the disadvantage, which we do, and yet we're cutting it everywhere in the schools and everywhere else. And yet we know that there is a socio-economic impact of cultures. We talk about integrating immigrants. We're talking about bringing cultures together, and yet we cut culture. So I think there has to be a political will. And the other thing that's ironical is that we're talking about business and art and the connection between them. And yet the more we talk about that, the more the government is cutting down its contributions to arts and culture. So we're hoping things will change after 2017. Thank you very much, Manon.